Tyrion2 would show us Tyrion heading north with Benjen and Jon to go and see the wall, and we find that it has been 3 days from Winterfell's dense woods, followed by 5 days in the mountains, and it is also noted that it has been a fortnight since the King's Road ended travelling north. Now while they are travelling, we also get reference from Tyrion that he doesn't seem to like Ghost, as it is unsettling how this silent observing wolf doesn't howl, which again I think is George trying to hint to us that there's something up with the wolves. And we learn that there are 8 in their party heading north. 2 Lannister men serving Tyrion, Yoren, who has a black beard and is a man of the Night's Watch, who has 2 boys from the Fingers that are coming to the wall, and so all in all Tyrion counts them as 5 men, 3 boys and a dire wolf, as well as 20 horses and a cage of ravens. Now Yoren notably is said to have a twisted shoulder, sour smell, and hair that is greasy, matted and full of lice, and has patchwork clothing, which is used as an example to point out to Jon that the Watch is not all it is cracked up to be. This is the stark reality that he is facing here. Now as they make camp, we learn that it is indeed the 18th night of their trip, and so Tyrion settles down with a book that he has taken on the properties of dragons, which it is implied he borrowed from Winterfell, as well as a few other rare volumes that he borrowed from the Starks. So again we find that there are dragon lore books in Winterfell's library, which we now know has been burnt in the previous chapter, meaning any potential texts that are left behind may have been destroyed, and Tyrion holds the only copies of these books right now. And it is here that we get some lore surrounding the information on dragons for the first time, as we learn that Dragonbone is black because it has a very high iron content, and it is considered to be strong as steel but lighter and flexible, making it something akin to carbon nanotubes. It is also fireproof, and is noted that when turned into bows, it is especially prided by the Dothraki for their immense range. Tyrion also notes that he is fascinated by dragons. When Cersei was first wed following the rebellion, he came to the capital to see the skulls, which had been placed in a cellar underneath by Robert, and these are described as being polished black, smooth and onyx. And there are 19 Targaryen dragon skulls in total, the oldest of which is said to be over 3,000 years old, which is way longer than the Targaryens have been in Westeros. So this is like 10 times longer than in the past from when Aegon conquered 300 years ago. So it makes sense then that this might actually be like the first ever Targaryen dragon's skull, which they have kept as an heirloom. We also find that the youngest of the dragon skulls are 150 years old, and the last were mastiff sized, and there were only 2 of them, and they were very misshapen and were born on Dragonstone. It is also of note that the largest of Aegon's dragons were Meraxes, Vhagar and Balerion, which we know existed around 300 years ago, and so were larger than the 3,000-year-old skull. And it is noted that the sheer size of these 3 dragons tell us that Balerion could have swallowed a mammoth whole. And I don't know if anybody has seen an elephant in regards to size comparisons to a mammoth, but that is a big ass creature. Now we get told here of the lore surrounding the conquest, and note that Loren, the king of the rock, and Mern, the king of the reach, stood against Aegon's conquest 300 years ago, and we find that Aegon himself had 10,000 men if you were lucky, and the Field of Fire against Loren and Mern is the only time that he unleashed all of his dragons at the same time, and we find that 4,000 men burned to death as a result, including King Mern. Tyrion also reveals in this chapter that during his childhood his father was Hand of the King for 20 years to King Aerys, before his brother Jaime inevitably killed the Mad King. And he also reveals that when he was 14 years old, he would set fires underneath Casterly Rock and dreamed of the deaths of Tywin and Cersei, which is strange, as we come to find that Casterly Rock does indeed have some strange magical connections to the Children of the Forest, and Tyrion setting a fire and then dreaming while staring into it of his family members makes me think of the Red Priest religion and whether people were actually observing this and watching, as we do find with the likes of Dany, that certain people have been plotting for years in the background, and so it's possible that major players like Tyrion are also pawns in these bigger games. Now we find once again that Ghost does not seem to like Tyrion whenever he approaches Jon, as he tackles Tyrion to keep him away from Jon this time. And we get mention of Grumpkins and Snarks here, where Jon jokes that maybe he thought Tyrion was a Grumpkin. Now I do find it interesting because we never get any proper description of what a Grumpkin and a Stark are meant to be in the old legends. A Snark does seem, based on the wording, to sound very much like Stark, which makes me wonder if there is some kind of connection there. And also Grumpkins, based on Tyrion being supposedly mistaken for one, makes me wonder if they are small, like gremlin or gargoyle-like creatures. We also get a mention here of the others again in regards to casual conversation, as someone notes that they thought the others had got you when someone disappears, which makes me think that there is again this recurring motif of people being taken or disappearing being considered taken by the others. And then we end the chapter on Jon staring into the fire after his conversation with Tyrion, which makes me wonder, can Jon see things in the flames, or potentially, as we know the Children of the Forest can stare at people through the animals, is the Red Priests and other allies of them staring at Jon through the flames, much like we see them do later on in the books when Melisandre can see Bran and Bloodraven.